The smoke hadn't cleared when Marcus Reed emerged from his shelter. 43 years of living through humanity's longest war had taught him to wait, let the debris settle, let the survivors crawl away or die, then move. The orbital bombardment had ended 3 hours ago, leaving New Detroit's industrial sector a graveyard of twisted metal and burning fuel. Marcus limped through the wreckage, his prosthetic leg grinding against fragments of concrete. The Zelthani had hit the fusion plant hard, but they'd paid for it. Alien fighter craft lay scattered like broken insects among the rubble, their sleek hulls cracked open to reveal the strange, luminescent innards of their technology. That's when he saw her, pinned beneath a collapsed communications array. A figure in midnight blue armor struggled weakly against the weight. Marcus approached cautiously, rifle ready. The armor bore the distinctive spiral markings of a Zelthani commander enemy, colors that had haunted his nightmares for decades. She looked up as his shadow fell across her. Her face was striking in its alien beauty, high cheekbones, skin with a subtle lavender tint, and eyes like twin amethysts that held both pain and defiance. Blood, darker than human blood, trickled from a gash on her temple. Human, she whispered, her voice carrying the melodic accent of her people. Come to gloat over the fallen? Marcus studied her trapped form. Her legs were pinned, possibly broken. Without immediate medical attention, she'd die within hours. He should walk away, should let another enemy commander fade into nothing. Instead, he found himself setting down his rifle. What's your name? He asked. She blinked, clearly not expecting the question. Commander Nix Valeria of the 3rd Fleet. And you are either my executioner or... She trailed off, uncertainty flickering across her features. Marcus Reed, former colonel, current nobody. He began testing the weight of the debris. This is going to hurt. Why? The question came out sharp, suspicious. Why would you help me? Marcus didn't answer immediately. He braced himself against the twisted metal and pushed, muscles straining. The array shifted slightly, and Nix gasped as pressure relocated across her injuries. Maybe I'm tired of watching people die, he said finally. Maybe I'm just getting soft in my old age. With a grinding shriek of metal on concrete, the debris lifted enough for him to drag her free. She was lighter than he'd expected, her alien physiology built for speed and agility rather than brute strength. Her armor was cracked in several places, revealing glimpses of the form-fitting suit beneath. Nix bit back a cry as he lifted her, her arms wrapping instinctively around his neck. For a moment, they were close enough that he could see flecks of silver in her purple eyes, could smell the strange, sweet scent that seemed to cling to all Zelthani. My forces, she managed through gritted teeth. Did any? All gone, Marcus said bluntly. Your fleet got torn apart by the defense grid. You're the only survivor I've seen. Her face went blank, and for a moment he thought she might be going into shock. Then her jaw tightened with a resolve that reminded him of his own. Soldiers, the ones who'd died following his orders in battles, whose names he tried to forget. They left me, she whispered, and there was something broken in her voice that cut deeper than any accusation. My own people. They left me to die. Marcus didn't respond. He'd seen enough betrayals in his time to recognize the look. Instead, he adjusted his grip and began the careful journey back to his bunker, moving through paths only he knew between the ruins. The hidden entrance was camouflaged behind a collapsed overpass, accessible only through a narrow gap in the debris. Marcus had spent 5 years after his discharge building this place, turning it into something between a fortress and a tomb. Now, carrying an enemy commander in his arms, he wondered if it might become both. This is madness, Nix murmured as he maneuvered them through the entrance. You're risking everything for someone who's spent years trying to kill your species. Marcus sealed the door behind them and activated the internal lighting. The bunker revealed itself in warm, amber tones, functional, but lived in, with jury-rigged electronics and salvaged furniture that spoke of long solitude. Maybe, he said, setting her down on the reinforced medical table he'd built for his own injuries. But I've done a lot of things in this war I'm not proud of. Maybe it's time I did something I could live with. As he began gathering medical supplies, Nix watched him with those unsettling amethyst eyes. You realize they'll come for me eventually. My people, yours, maybe both. This bunker will become a target. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, taking in her proud bearing even while wounded. The way she held pain like a familiar companion. "Then I guess we'd better make sure you can fight when they do." For the first time since he'd found her, something like surprise crossed her features. Then, almost against her will, her lips curved in the faintest shadow of a smile. "You are either very brave or very foolish, Marcus Reed." "Probably both," he admitted, reaching for the medical scanner. "Now let me see how badly you're hurt." Outside, the wind carried the scent of burning metal and the distant sound of scavenger crews kicking through the ruins. But inside the bunker, something else was beginning, something neither of them had expected to find in the ashes of war. 3 days passed in careful silence. Marcus had treated injuries before field medicine was a survival skill in the ruins, but Nyx's alien physiology presented unique challenges. Her bones were denser than human bones. Her blood carried different oxygen markers, and her nervous system responded differently to pain suppressants. "Your medical scanner is primitive," she observed, watching him adjust the diagnostic array he'd cobbled together from salvaged parts. Despite her criticism, she'd been a surprisingly cooperative patient, allowing him to examine her injuries without the hostility he'd expected. "It works," Marcus replied, checking the readings. 3 fractured ribs, torn muscle in your left thigh, and some kind of neural disruption in your spine. Nothing permanent, but you'll need time to heal." Nyx shifted on the medical table, testing her range of motion. She wore one of his old military shirts now, the fabric hanging loose on her smaller frame. The sight of her in his clothes stirred something unexpected in his chest, something he'd thought the war had killed years ago. "You've been kind," she said quietly, her musical voice softer than before. "I don't understand why." Marcus sat down the scanner and met her gaze. "I lost my family in the first year of the war. My wife and daughter were on the colony ship Meridian when your fleet hit the civilian evacuation routes." Nyx's expression froze. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I spent the next 20 years hating your people," Marcus continued, his voice steady but carrying old pain. "Hating you so much it consumed everything else. But hate's a heavy burden, and I'm tired of carrying it." She was quiet for a long moment, studying his weathered face. "I had a sister," she said finally, "younger than me. She died in the Battle of Proxima, fighting humans who probably felt the same way you did." "What was her name?" "Zara." She was everything I'm not. Gentle, artistic. She painted scenes of our homeworld, the crystal forests, the singing lakes. She never wanted to be a soldier." Nyx's voice caught slightly. "I convinced her to join the fleet. Told her it was her duty." Marcus moved closer, drawn by the raw grief in her voice. "It wasn't your fault, wasn't it?" She looked up at him, and he saw tears glistening in her amethyst eyes. "I've spent my entire adult life following orders, believing in a cause that's cost me everyone I've ever loved. And now my own people abandon me the moment I become inconvenient." Without thinking, Marcus reached out and brushed a tear from her cheek. Her skin was warm, softer than he'd expected, with a subtle luminescence that seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. She didn't pull away. "You're not inconvenient to me," he said quietly. Something shifted in the air between them. Nyx's breathing quickened, and Marcus found himself acutely aware of every detail, the way her lips parted slightly, the rapid flutter of her pulse at her throat, the scent of her that reminded him of ozone and distant stars. "Marcus," she whispered, and his name sounded different in her voice, like music. He should step back, should remember that she was the enemy, that this was madness. Instead, he found himself cupping her face in his hands, thumbs tracing the elegant line of her cheekbones. "This is impossible," she breathed, but she was leaning into his touch. "Everything about this is impossible," he agreed, and then his lips found hers. The kiss was tentative at first, an exploration across the vast divide of species and hatred. But when she responded, her arms winding around his neck, it deepened into something desperate and hungry. She tasted like starlight and promises, and when she pulled him closer, he could feel the subtle vibration of her alien heartbeat against his chest. They broke apart, both breathing hard. Nyx's eyes were wide, pupils dilated, her skin flushed, with an opalescent glow he'd never seen before. "I should go," she said, but made no move to release him. "When I'm healed, I should leave. This will only bring you pain." "Maybe," Marcus said, his forehead resting against hers, "but I've been numb for so long. I'd almost forgotten what pain felt like. At least this pain means I'm still alive." She laughed softly, a sound like silver bells. "You're either the wisest man I've ever met or the most foolish. You're the second person to tell me that recently." This time when she kissed him, there was nothing tentative about it. Her lips were fierce against his, claiming him with an intensity that left him breathless. When she nipped gently at his lower lip, a sound escaped him that was half groan, half prayer. "Nix," he managed, and she silenced him with another kiss, deeper this time, her tongue dancing with his in a rhythm that seemed to bypass his brain entirely and speak directly to parts of him he'd thought were dead. Her hands found the hem of his shirt, fingers tracing the scars that marked his chest and shoulders, evidence of decades of violence. But her touch was gentle, reverent almost, as if she were trying to heal old wounds with her caresses. "So many scars," she murmured against his throat, her lips following the path of her fingers. "Occupational hazard," he said, then gasped as she found a particularly sensitive spot just below his ear. "Nix, are you sure?" "I'm sure of nothing," she interrupted, pulling back to look at him. "Except that for the first time in years, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." The honesty in her voice undid him completely. When she drew him down for another kiss, he surrendered to it, to her, to the impossible connection that had formed between them in the space of 3 days. Later, as they lay together on the narrow cot, her head on his chest and his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder, Marcus marveled at how perfectly she fit against him. Despite their physiological differences, her skin still held that subtle glow, and he could feel the gentle hum of her alien heartbeat synchronizing with his own. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Marcus looked down at her, at the way her silver hair caught the amber light of the bunker, at the contentment in her exotic features. Outside, the war continued. Eventually, someone would come looking for them, but for now, in this moment, they had found something worth protecting. "Now we figure out how to survive," he said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Together, Nick smiled and snuggled closer, her arm tightening around his waist. Together, she agreed, and for the first time since the war began, Marcus Reed felt something he'd thought was lost forever: hope. The proximity alarm woke them at dawn. Marcus rolled from the cot, instantly alert, while Nick sat up beside him, her enhanced hearing picking up sounds he couldn't yet detect. 3 vehicles, she whispered, her eyes reflecting the amber emergency lighting. Ground effect engines, military grade. Marcus was already moving, pulling on clothes and checking his weapons. In the weeks since their first kiss, Nix had recovered most of her mobility. She moved with fluid grace now, no longer the broken commander he'd pulled from the wreckage. "Corporate?" he asked, tossing her the combat vest he'd modified for her smaller frame. "Worse," she said, her face grim. "Those engine signatures, I know them. Terran Security Solutions. Jade Voss's mercenaries." Marcus froze. "Voss is here. You know her, by reputation. She doesn't leave survivors." He sealed the bunker's blast doors and activated the defensive systems. "How did they find us?" Nix was silent for a moment, her expression troubled. Then she reached into her armor's inner lining, her face going pale as she withdrew a small, disc-shaped device no bigger than a coin. "Quantum tracker," she breathed. "Embedded in my armor's biolayer. I never thought to check." Her voice trailed off as the implications hit them both. "How long has it been active?" "Since before you found me. They've known exactly where I am this entire time." She looked at him with something like horror. "Marcus, I've led them right to you." Outside, the sound of armored boots on metal echoed through the bunker's acoustic sensors. A cold, feminine voice spoke through the external comm system. "Commander Valyria, this is Jade Voss. I know you're in there, and I know you're not alone. You have 60 seconds to surrender yourself, or we breach the bunker and kill everyone inside." Marcus grabbed his rifle and moved to the firing position he'd prepared for this day. "We could run. The escape tunnel." "No." Nix's voice was steel. "I won't run anymore, and I won't let you die because of my mistakes." She moved to the weapons locker, her movements predatory and efficient. The wounded commander was gone, replaced by something lethal and beautiful. Marcus felt his pulse quicken as he watched her. Check the charge on a plasma rifle, not from fear, but from the raw attraction of seeing her in her element. Together, he asked. Together. She confirmed, and the smile she gave him was sharp as a blade. The first breach attempt came at the main door-shaped charges that shook dust from the ceiling, but failed to penetrate Marcus's reinforced barriers. The second came through the ventilation system, where automated defenses shredded the infiltration drones. She's probing, Nix observed, watching the tactical display, looking for weaknesses. Then let's give her one. Marcus activated a false vulnerability in the bunker's eastern wall, a section that appeared structurally weak, but was actually a kill corridor. When Voss's team breached it, they walked into overlapping fields of fire. The battle was brief and vicious. Marcus fought with the methodical precision of long experience, while Nix moved like liquid lightning, her alien reflexes allowing her to dance between enemy fire patterns. They worked together seamlessly, covering each other's flanks, communicating with glances and gestures more intimate than words. When the shooting stopped, 3 mercenaries lay dead, but Voss herself was nowhere to be found. Behind you, Nix screamed. Marcus spun to find Jade Voss emerging from concealment, her rifle trained on his chest. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe 30, with short-cropped auburn hair and the kind of cold beauty that spoke of surgical enhancement. Her smile was predatory. The famous Marcus Reed, she said. You've been harder to find than expected. Not hard enough, apparently. Oh, we've been watching you for months, but you were small time until you picked up alien royalty here. Her gaze shifted to Nix. Commander Valeria, your government is willing to pay handsomely for your return, dead or alive, though they prefer alive for the intelligence value. My government abandoned me, Nix said coldly. Did they? Or did they simply set a trap using you as bait? Voss's smile widened. Either way, you're valuable merchandise. Marcus saw Nix's expression change, saw the moment she realized the full scope of the betrayal. The tracker hadn't been an oversight, it had been intentional. Her own people had used her as a stalking horse to flush out human collaborators. The rage that crossed her features was terrible and beautiful. When she moved, it was within human speed, covering the distance to Voss in a blur of motion. The mercenary leader managed one shot before Nix's hands closed around her throat. You want to know what I'm worth? Nix hissed, her grip tightening. Let me show you, Voss gasped, clawing at Nix's fingers, but the Zelthani commander's strength was beyond human norms. Marcus watched, transfixed by the lethal grace of his lover in combat. Nix, he said quietly. She's done. For a moment, he thought she might not hear him. Then, slowly, she released her grip. Voss collapsed, unconscious but breathing. We should kill her, Nix said, her voice still carrying that dangerous edge. Maybe, but that would make us like them. Nix looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. What do we do with her? Strip her gear, tie her up, leave her for the authorities. She'll live, but her reputation won't. As they worked to secure Voss, Marcus noticed the way Nix moved, fluid, confident, completely healed. Whatever damage the crash had done to her body was gone, replaced by something even more formidable. You're beautiful when you fight, he said quietly. She glanced at him, surprised. That's a strange thing to say. Everything about this is strange. He reached out to touch her face, and she leaned into his palm. I've never felt more alive than I do when I'm fighting beside you, Marcus. There was something vulnerable in her voice, something that made his chest tighten. I know, it's insane. We're from different species, we should be enemies, and we're probably going to die because of this. But I don't care. He pulled her closer, his hands framing her face. I love you, Nix Valeria. I love your strength, your courage, the way you make me remember who I used to be. Her eyes widened, pupils dilating. You can't, we can't. This is. He silenced her with a kiss, pouring everything he felt into the contact. When they broke apart, she was breathing hard, her skin glowing with that opalescent shimmer he'd come to associate with her deeper emotions. I love you too, she whispered against his lips. Creator, help me. I love you too. They kissed again, desperate and hungry, hands roaming over each other's bodies with the urgency of people who'd faced death together and survived. When she pressed herself against him, he could feel every line of her alien form, could taste the electricity of her emotions on his tongue. "We have to leave," she said, even as her hands worked at his shirt. "More will come, I know," he replied, but his attention was focused on the place where her pulse fluttered beneath her translucent skin. "Soon." "Soon," she agreed, and pulled him down for another kiss that tasted like violence and promises and the sweet desperation of lovers who might not survive the dawn. Outside, the wind carried the scent of burned metal and approaching storm clouds. But inside the bunker, wrapped in each other's arms, Marcus and Nix found a moment of perfect clarity in the chaos of war. They would run, they would fight, they would face whatever came together. And for now, that was enough. The knock came at sunset, 3 days after the Voss incident. Not the crash of breached doors or the whine of cutting tools, but an actual knock, measured, familiar, almost casual. Marcus froze at the security console. Only one person knew that particular rhythm. "Kane," he breathed. Nix looked up from the communication array she'd been modifying with salvaged Zelthani components. "Friend of yours?" "Used to be." Marcus's finger hovered over the door controls. "Kane Thorne, we served together for 15 years. Saved each other's lives more times than I can count." And now, Marcus pulled up the external feed. Kane stood alone in the fading light, hands visible, no obvious weapons. He looked older, gray threading his dark hair. New lines around his green eyes, but his bearing was still military straight. "Now I don't know," Marcus admitted. He opened the comm channel. "Kane." "Marcus." The voice was warm, familiar, carrying the ghost of shared campaigns and old jokes. "Permission to come aboard. You alone. Scout's honor." Despite everything, Marcus found himself smiling. It had been their old code, dating back to their academy days. He keyed the door sequence, but kept his rifle ready. Kane stepped inside, and for a moment it was like stepping back in time. Then his gaze fell on Nix, and something shifted in his expression. "So it's true," he said quietly. "Marcus Reed, harboring alien fugitives. Commander Nix Valeria," Nix said, rising gracefully from her seat. "And you are?" "Impressed," Kane replied, his soldier's eye taking in her modified armor, her weapons, the confident way she carried herself. "The reports didn't do you justice." "What reports?" Marcus stepped between them, suddenly wary. Kane sighed, the sound carrying years of weariness. "Marcus, we need to talk. Privately. Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of her." "Can I?" Kane's gaze flicked to Nix, then back to Marcus. "Even if it's about the price on her head? Even if it's about the fact that every intelligence agency in human space is looking for you both?" The air in the bunker seemed to thicken. Nix's hand drifted toward her sidearm, a movement so subtle Marcus almost missed it. "How did you find us?" she asked. "The same way everyone else has been tracking you. Quantum resonance from that tracker you found. Even destroyed, it left a signature." Kane moved to the small table, uninvited, and sat down heavily. "But that's not why I'm here." "Then why?" Marcus remained standing, rifle still in his hands. "Because I owe you my life a dozen times over. Because we were brothers once. And because I wanted to give you a chance to walk away from this." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. Walk away from what, exactly? Kane reached slowly into his jacket and withdrew. "A data pad. A contract. 50 million credits for the alien commander, alive. 20 million for you, dead or alive. And you're here to collect. I'm here to offer you a choice." Kane's voice was steady, professional. "Walk away now. Leave her, disappear into the outer colonies, and I'll tell them I never found you. You get to live. Marcus, you get to have a life." Marcus felt Nix tense behind him when he glanced back. Her amethyst eyes were unreadable, but he could see the subtle glow beginning beneath her skin, the bioluminescent response. That meant she was preparing for violence. "And if I refuse, then in about 6 hours, this place gets hit by a joint task force. Human military, corporate mercenaries, and a Zelthani hunter-killer team. They want to make sure there are no survivors, no loose ends. Including you." Kane's smile was bitter. Especially me. I know too much about too many Black Ops programs. This was supposed to be my retirement job, clean, simple, lucrative. Instead, I find out my oldest friend has gone native with the enemy. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of shared history and current betrayal. Finally, Marcus set down his rifle. She's not the enemy anymore, he said quietly. Isn't she? Kane leaned forward. Marcus, look at yourself. Really look. A month ago, you were a bitter hermit drinking yourself to death in this bunker. Now you're willing to die for an alien who's killed thousands of your own species. She's not. She destroyed the colony ship Meridian. Kane interrupted. Your wife and daughter were on that ship. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He turned slowly to look at Nix, who had gone perfectly still. Tell me he's lying, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. Nix met his gaze, and he saw the truth in her eyes before she spoke. The Meridian was a legitimate military target. It was carrying weapons shipments to the front lines. It was an evacuation vessel. It was both. Her voice was steady, but he could see pain flickering across her features. The weapons were hidden among the civilian compartments. My intelligence was incomplete. Marcus felt the world shift around him, everything, their connection, their love. The future he'd begun to imagine suddenly felt like a cruel joke. Kane stood up slowly. Marcus, I'm sorry. I know what she means to you. But she's the reason your family is dead. You think I don't know that? The words tore out of Marcus's throat. You think I haven't wrestled with that every night since I found out who she was? Both Kane and Nix stared at him in shock. You knew. Nix whispered. I figured it out 3 days ago. Cross-reference the attack patterns from your old missions with the intelligence reports I still had access to. Marcus laughed bitterly. Commander Nix Valeria, the Silver Ghost, architect of the Meridian disaster. Then why? Kane's voice was genuinely puzzled. Why protect her? Why choose her over your own people? Marcus looked at Nix, really looked at her. He saw the warrior who had killed his family, yes, but he also saw the woman who had held him through nightmares, who had shared her own grief, who had chosen to trust him with her life, because she's not the same person who fired those weapons, he said finally. Because the war changed all of us, and because sometimes you have to choose between the past and the future. Kane shook his head. You're making a mistake, Marcus. She's using you. It's what they do, manipulate, seduce, make you think they care. Is that what you think? Nix spoke for the first time in minutes, her voice carrying a dangerous edge. That I seduced him for protection, didn't you? What happened next was almost too fast to follow. Nix moved like liquid lightning, crossing the space between them in a heartbeat. Her hand closed around Kane's throat, lifting him off his feet. With inhuman strength, I could kill you now, she hissed, her eyes blazing with bioluminescent fury. Snap your neck like a twig. Is that what a frightened, manipulative creature would do? Kane clawed at her grip, his face turning red. Marcus started forward, but Nix's free hand stopped him. No, she said, her gaze never leaving Kane's face. Let him see what he's really dealing with. She held Kane for another moment, then released him. He collapsed to the floor, gasping. I am Commander Nix Valeria of the 3rd Fleet, she said, her voice carrying the full weight of her authority. I have commanded warships, led assault forces, and yes, I have killed thousands in the name of duty. But what Marcus and I have is not manipulation. It's something your small, frightened mind could never understand. She turned to Marcus, and when she spoke again, her voice was soft, vulnerable. I love him. I would die for him, and if he chooses to walk away because of what I've done, I will respect that choice. The bunker fell silent except for Kane's labored breathing. Marcus felt the weight of decision pressing down on him, like a physical force. His family, his people, his old life, or Nix, the future, love born from the ashes of war. He looked at Kane, still gasping on the floor. Get out, Marcus, please, get out. The roar echoed off the bunker walls. And tell whoever sent you that if they want her, they'll have to go through me. Kane struggled to his feet, his face a mixture of disappointment and something that might have been respect. 6 hours, Marcus. That's all the time you have. Then we'd better not waste it. After Kane left, Marcus and Nix stood in silence for a long moment. Finally, she moved to him, her hands framing his face with infinite gentleness. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry about your family. If I could undo it, I know." He covered her hands with his own. "And I'm sorry it took me so long to tell you the truth." "What happens now?" Marcus pulled her closer, his lips finding hers in a kiss that tasted of desperation and determination. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "Now we prepare for war," he said. "And then we find a way to disappear forever, together. As they began preparing for the assault they knew was coming, both of them understood that their love had been tested in the crucible of truth and betrayal, and somehow, impossibly, it had emerged stronger than ever. They came at dawn, just as Kane had promised. The joint task force hit the bunker with everything they had: plasma bombardment, shaped charges, and coordinated assault teams from 3 different ions, but Marcus and Nix were already gone. The escape tunnel led to an abandoned subway station 2 kilometers away, where they'd cached supplies and transportation. As the bunker exploded behind them, Marcus felt a pang of loss. It had been his home for 5 years, his sanctuary from a world gone mad. "Regrets?" Nix asked, securing the last of their gear to the hover cycle. "Always," Marcus replied. But his hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "But not about this." They rode hard through the ruins of New Detroit, staying ahead of the search teams that would soon realize they'd been chasing ghosts. The industrial spaceport was their destination, a barely controlled zone, where questions weren't asked and credits spoke louder than loyalties. The ship was exactly where their contact had promised, a modified freight hauler called the Starbreaker, old but space-worthy, with engines that could outrun anything in the system. The captain was a grizzled veteran named Torres who'd fought in the Outer Rim campaigns. "You the couple causing all the fuss?" he asked, eyeing Nix with professional interest. "That's us," Marcus confirmed, transferring the agreed-upon payment. "Can you get us out of the system clean?" "Kid, I've been running contraband since before you were born. The question is, where do you want to go?" Marcus and Nix exchanged glances. They'd discussed this during their frantic preparations. The need to find somewhere beyond the reach of both governments, somewhere they could build a new life together. "The neutral zone," Nix said. "There's a system called Kepler 442-3. Habitable worlds, no permanent settlements, no strategic value to either side." Torres whistled. "That's a long haul." "You sure about this?" "We're sure," Marcus said, his arm sliding around Nix's waist. "How long?" 3 weeks through hyperspace. "If we don't run into trouble. 6 months if we do it." The launch was clean too. Clean as they cleared the atmosphere. Marcus felt the familiar tingle of approaching danger. "Pursuit vectors," Nix announced from the navigation station. "To Terran destroyers, 1 Zalthani hunter-killer." "Persistent bastards," Torres muttered, pushing the engines to full power. "Hang on." What followed was a running battle through the asteroid belt, with the Starbreaker weaving between the rocky debris while enemy fire lit up the space around them. Marcus and Nix worked the defensive systems, their earlier combat experience serving them well there. Nix pointed to a massive asteroid with a hollow core. "Take us inside." Torres complied, threading the ship through an opening barely wider than their hull. Inside, they found a natural cavern large enough to hide a fleet. The pursuing ships passed overhead, their sensors confused by the metallic ore in the asteroid's composition. "Clever girl," Torres said admiringly. "How'd you know about this place?" "Zalthani survey data," Nix replied. "This asteroid belt is full of hiding spots, if you know where to look." They waited 6 hours before emerging, long enough for the pursuit to give up and move on. The jump to hyperspace was almost anticlimactic after the violence of their escape. In the quiet of hyperspace, Marcus and Nix finally had time to breathe. They stood at the observation deck, watching the stars streak past in impossible colors. "No going back now," Marcus said. "Would you want to?" Nix leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "Never." He turned to face her, his hands cupping her face. "I love you, Nix. Whatever we find out there, whatever we build together, I want you to know that." "I love you too," she whispered, her skin beginning to glow with that soft bioluminescence that marked her deepest emotions, more than I ever thought possible when they kissed. It was with the passion of lovers who had survived the impossible. Marcus lifted her easily, carrying her to their small cabin as she laughed against his lips. "You know," she said as he set her down beside their bunk, "there are certain physiological differences between our species that we haven't fully explored. Is that so?" Marcus's hands found the fastenings of her modified armor. "I suppose. We have 3 weeks to figure it out." "At least 3 weeks," she corrected, her own hands working at his clothes. "Possibly a lifetime." Their lovemaking was desperate and tender by turns. Two souls who had found each other across the vast divide of war and hatred. When Nyx cried out his name in the ancient language of her people, Marcus felt something fundamental shift inside him, a recognition that they were no longer just human and Zelthani, but something new entirely. Afterward, they lay entwined on the narrow bunk, her luminescent skin casting soft patterns on the cabin walls. "Tell me about Kepler 442, Marcus said, tracing circles on her bare shoulder. "The primary world has vast oceans and small continents, rich in mineral resources, but mostly empty. The second world is desert, but with underground water sources. The third is a frozen wasteland, but with spectacular aurora displays." "Which one?" "The ocean world," she said without hesitation. "I've always loved the water, on my home world. We had singing lakes, bodies of water that created music when the wind passed over them. Then that's where we'll build our home." She smiled, an expression of pure joy that made his heart ache. "Our home. I like the sound of that." They spent the remaining weeks of the journey planning their future. Marcus would use his military engineering skills to build their settlement, while Nyx would handle the technical aspects, power generation, communication systems, defensive measures. They would be completely self-sufficient, dependent on no one but each other. The Kepler 442 system was everything Nyx had promised. The ocean world hung before them like a blue-green jewel, its surface broken by archipelagos of volcanic islands. They chose a site on the largest landmass, a bay protected by natural barriers, with fresh water and rich soil. Torres helped them unload their supplies, his expression thoughtful. "You know, I've been thinking about retirement myself. Mind if I check back in a few years?" "You'll always be welcome," Marcus said, shaking the old spacer's hand. "Take care of each other," Torres replied. "Love like yours is rarer than neutronium." As the Starbreaker disappeared into hyperspace, Marcus and Nyx stood on the beach of their new world, watching the twin suns set over the endless ocean. "Any regrets?" Nyx asked. Echoing his earlier words, Marcus looked at her, his lover, his partner, his future, and felt peace settle over him like a gentle tide. "Only that we didn't find each other sooner," he said. She smiled and kissed him, soft and sweet. As the alien stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, "We found each other when we needed to," she said, "and that's enough." They built their home over the following months, a simple structure that blended human practicality with Zelthani aesthetics. The walls were made of local stone, but they curved and flowed like living things. The windows were positioned to catch the singing of the ocean wind, creating a constant, gentle music. Years passed. They grew older together, their love deepening. With each shared sunrise, Marcus taught Nyx to fish in the human way, while she showed him how to read the patterns of the stars according to Zelthani tradition. They created their own culture, their own traditions, their own language of touch and laughter.